Let's focus on the individuals, on the developers for a little bit. This is out of your book. It's important to manage focus as well as stamina to be able to get to the product to be a professional coder, right? Based on your experience, what are some good, techniques for measuring and improving the overall stamina and focus of an individual?
Okay, well, rule number one, get a lot of sleep. Don't short yourself on sleep. Sleep is one of the most important things for maintaining focus and intellectual energy and just cognitive ability. If you are short on sleep, you just can't think. And believe me, the code you write is going to be crap. So get plenty of sleep. Number two, avoid emotional conflict. Now, I know that's a difficult thing to do, but it's impossible to sit down and focus on code that requires deep thought just after you've had a big fight with your wife or your husband or your significant other or whatever, because your mind is completely consumed by that conflict. If you find yourself in that situation, the thing you need to focus on is defusing it. Here, get that conflict out of the way, because you're not going to be able to think. A lot of programmers think, I can just block out the world and focus in. But at least personally, for me, I never found that to work very well. So the thing that I found most helpful there was just call my wife, do something to get that emotional stress out of the way. I also am skeptical of focus aids. And by that, I mean headphones playing music or other kinds of aids that purport to make it easier for you to concentrate. It seems to me, in my experience, that the environment that is most conducive to focus is silence or background noise of other people focusing. There's something conducive to that. So I'm skeptical about the headphones, right? And then the last thing about this is hyperfocus. There's a certain amount of focus you need. You've got to be able to focus on the problem at hand. But you can go too far. You can focus in so tight that you're not seeing the big picture anymore. Some people call this being in the zone. And it feels really productive, but it's not. Because you are so focused on the minutia that you forget the big picture, and that leads to loss of productivity in the medium term.
Interesting. I actually wanted to ask you about the zone, because many developers set up their setup and workflow around achieving that flow that gets them into the state of heavy coding. You're advocating against this. Is it mostly related to the distraction, the noise distraction, and the hyper focus? Are these the two things that weigh this flow down, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's the hyper focus that most concerns me about that. So one of the things I do as a way to avoid hyperfocus, now that I've recognized that hyperfocus is actually detrimental, when I was younger, I loved it. There's this hormonal thing that happens in your body when you hyperfocus, and it just feels so good. And time goes by, in a blink of the eye. You could spend 5 hours in this zone and wonder what happened to the time. But since then, I don't like it. I think I do better if I break the hyperfocus. So one of the things I do is code in short periods of time, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I use the Pomodoro technique if I'm going to get into any kind of heavy coding. And I intentionally break the time up into these 20 or 25 minute chunks. And then I get up and I walk around and I get something to eat, or I talk on the phone, or I talk to my wife or something like that. And then I will do another one of these 25-minute segments. And I find that is actually makes me more productive than, 4 hours in the zone. Just maybe it's a personal thing with me, but that's my experience.
That's interesting. Actually, I know you're a big fan of the Pomodoro technique. Is there something like a threshold that developers or programmers should aspire to in terms of how many of those Pomodoros they can fit into one day, like, or their schedule. It's really random to each and every one.
Well, I mean, you can do the theoretical thing and say, okay, you know, how many possible Pomodoros can you have in an 8-hour day? And that number is something on the order of 16 or 15.
Okay.
I always felt very good if I could get more than 10. 10 is pretty good, right? That means that, you know, about a third of your day is taken up with other distractions, but 2/3 of the day were spent in pretty tightly controlled focus, not hyper focus, but focus. And I think that's very productive for me.